Hello and welcome back to the CirclingSeattleSports podcast. This is the 94th episode of the podcast and the 29th installment of the Seattle interview series. Today, I am joined by Kristen McNabb, former Virginia Cavalier, all ACC second team in 2016, ACC women's soccer all academic team in 16, former member of the Melbourne Victory for a lone period, and a member of the All Reign since 2017. Uh, I was just talking with Kristen about how it was cool to kind of reflect on uh, her being in person with the club since Seattle. So I don't know, that's a little cool thing. But how have things been? I know we talked about you just coming out of practice, coming off a nice win against Kansas City. How have you been this year? How have things sort of gone? I know it's probably a lot better than last year with all things considered, but how has the season been so far?
Yeah, it's been a journey. We're only like a quarter of the way through the season. Um, because we started and then we had Challenge Cup games and then obviously started regular season. So um yeah, it's definitely felt like a lifetime, but that's good in a sense where, we've ebbed and flowed as a team. And I think hopefully we can ride this latest win and hopefully get on the up and up because we've struggled the past couple weeks. So yeah, it's overall been good. It's yeah.
Yeah, like to your point, there have been some tough losses, but I'm sure it was nice to sort of get one back in the win column, get those 3 points. Boats having a good game there, but and hopefully continue to maybe work on that. But I'm sure at the same time, with all these new players, and I will address that a little bit down the road, I'm sure at some point it's like you've got to make sure everybody's in the right position to succeed, right? Is that sort of thing where it's like we've got all these talented women, and that's great, but at the end of the day, everything's got to fall into place in the right way. You can't put the square block in the circle hole. That's not how it's going to work.
Yeah, for sure. And like even just kind of getting adjusted and like acquainted to all these new players and styles. And we haven't had like super consistent lineups. So kind of just trial and error, kind of finding what works. And yeah, going with success once we find it.
So now I want to take us back to sort of beginnings. What ultimately got you into playing the sport of soccer? I'm sure that your father being an All-American soccer player at Babson, and please correct me if I pronounce that wrong, um, as well as your sister Lindsay playing soccer at Rutgers. I'm sure that family connection had some link there, but was there any other link that got you into the sport of soccer, or was it more of just a family thing that launched was a launch point for your journey in soccer there?
No, it's for sure just a family thing. I feel like I started touching a ball when I was like 3 years old because my sister's 3 years older. So I was always trying to play catch up and do whatever she did. Um, and yeah, my dad obviously like played the game and loves the game. So I feel like we always had soccer on in our house. We were always in the backyard kicking it around. And yeah, I just really fell in love with it from a young age. And then it was kind of like a family thing up until, college, really, because my sister and I both played in college. So we would always go out to the field with my dad, um, which my mom hated because someone would like always come back in tears because we would get so competitive. But yeah, it's yeah, still a thing like I talk to my dad most about. I always call him after games, always just like to debrief and kind of get his thoughts. So
Was there any certain point that you're able to pinpoint where you knew that you wanted to take soccer to the professional level? I know that there are some things in college that will have to be addressed in relating to that. But did you ever think at a younger age or like through high school you said, "Hey, I want to take this pro," because you did captain the PDA charge to two national championship games and you were ranked 34th nationally. Would you said, "Hey, I'm good at this. I want to take this all the way."
I think when I was like really little and all like the what do you want to be when you grow up things, like I would always write professional soccer player. And then I think in high school, um, I think the first league was around when I was in elementary school because I do remember going to some games. And then it folded. So I don't think in high school there was like a super visible women's league that I really paid attention to was like just the national team. So I don't think I really had my like sights set on that. I was kind of just like, let's go to college. And then, the NWSL finally came back in, I think in 2011, 2012. So I think once I was in college was when it became like a really realistic dream. But yeah, from a young age, it definitely was a dream of mine.
Is there any pressure that you might have felt, being ranked nationally, being 34th ranked nationally? Is there anything you're like, oh, this is kind of big, or is it more of I mean, that's cool to be recognized like that, but ultimately, I still got to go through college and make it to the pros. What was being ranked like, or did you not really even pay attention to that?
Yeah, to be honest, I really did not pay attention to that because I feel like the most pressure I ever get is just like internally. It's what I put on myself. So I think I was probably feeling pressure, but it was, my own doing, and just trying to be like the best player I could be. Um, yeah. So, and I it wasn't really based off of the ranking or anything.
Were you involved in any other sports, or was it always just sort of soccer was the main focus? Was there anything else that you might have dabbled a little bit in, or was it just always soccer, took primary attention?
Up until like seventh grade, I played softball, which I liked, but it was a little too boring for me. And then I swam actually up until like sixth grade. Again, I wasn't like really competitive at these things though. It was mostly just to like do other things and I like
Hmm.
had fun doing them. Um, I golfed a lot with my dad. I like played a little bit of lacrosse in the summer. Um, but then yeah, if I wanted to like take the next step with any of those sports, it wouldn't have really been possible to be like super competitive at both. So I think after like seventh grade, I really started to just focus on soccer.
So then heading into college, how did you end up deciding on the University of Virginia? What factored into that? Because I mean, there was no family tie there, unless I'm missing something, obviously. Um, what fell into place for you to attend U of V?
Yeah, I visited so many schools and I just was kind of looking for the best balance between academics, soccer, and just like the place, obviously. And funny, I had a cousin who went there. She got married there. And so I had been to the campus in like seventh grade and like didn't remember it really. So then when I went back, I was like, wow, this place is amazing. But I think what really sold that school, compared to the others, was just the people. The coaching staff and the girls on the team were just like so nice and so welcoming. And I heard like great things from a coaching standpoint, about Steve and everybody on the staff. So I thought that it would really help me elevate my game going there. But I also knew I was in like good hands because they're just genuinely good humans.
Can you talk about, getting through the rehab and the work of recovery from those multiple ACL tears in college? Um, because you talked about in a great interview with Sounded Hot, talked about controlling the controllables, and just getting through college. Was it more of so just trying to get back to where you were, or what helped motivate you get back? Because obviously, you want to get healthy again, but was there anything that sort of stuck in your mind or that you kept as a mindset to help get through that recovery?
Um, yeah, I think after the first one, I was like a senior in high school. So I think I was a little naive to like kind of how like major an ACL injury was. I was like, it's fine. We'll be fine. And like went into college, kind of came back. And I think some of the times I was playing, like some of my best soccer, I felt like was like right when I was cleared to play. Cause I kind of just had this like carefree mentality of like I'm just so lucky to get to be on the field. Like this is so fun. Um, I think my second one was probably like a little bit more dramatic. Just being in that like I was back for less than a year and then last game of the regular season versus our rival Virginia Tech, it happened. So it was, it was pretty horrible. But I remember having this conversation with my mom, and I was like I'm I'm kind of like a glass half empty kind of girl. Like I'm really not like a super positive rah person, but I just remember being like, this, I'm not letting this like ruin my college career or my experience. Like it's just not going to happen. So I actually do think I had to like put my positive pants on and just really kind of power through, smile through it. And yeah, it ended up working out. So
It kind of is interesting to see how that goes, because I mean, going through multiple and let alone one, obviously it's difficult, but to see it's like, all right, this is not how it's going to end. I'm sure
yeah,
that's kind of has to be how it is, depending on how certain people get through a recovery. But um, I think that's always important to note in a lot of things is controlling the controllable and just doing what you can do. Because sometimes it's just out of your hands, not all injuries just, yeah, it's tough with a lot of people just seeing different injuries throughout the sports world. So controlling the controllable is always going to be something that I think is a good saying to have and to keep in your mind, especially when you deal with multiple, like you have there.
yeah.
Obviously, I'm sure you don't want to have that be the answer to this next question, but what do you remember most from your time with the Cavaliers?
I just remember like having such like tight bonds with my teammates and my coaches, and like, when you play in these big games, like we just had so much pride and we just loved the program and everything, and like we just wanted to win, like for the school and for each other. Like it was just, there was just so much like love. It was awesome. So that probably stands out.
It's always sort of cool to see. Obviously, making tournaments is great and all that, but when you make the right decision, or like the right decision, because I know some people they transfer out, just didn't end up being what they wanted to do, or at the school that they wanted. It's always cool to say, hey, I hit it on the nail. I found the place I wanted to be, and it worked out. Because I know obviously for everybody that's not the case, and to be able to get through those things that you had to deal with the injury, and like you were saying, get back out there and play carefree and do stuff like that. It's cool to see that, because I know for some people, sometimes it's like, hey man, how do I really come back from that sort of injury? Um, Guy, like if I shift over to the Mariners, Kyle Lewis, I think he blew out a couple things in his knee, and he's been able to come back from that. I know he's dealing with an injury now, but um, sometimes these stories of recovery are really great. I know, when it's somebody that's not you, it might seem cooler because I know you've been through that, and it's probably like, oh, that sucked. I really don't want to look back at that. Um, but it is cool to hear how that recovery went there. Um, and then shifting next, how was your draft experience, and how did that sort of thing go? What was the waiting like, and how did you finally feel when you were notified that you were drafted? I believe it was 37th overall. How was your draft experience as a whole?
Yeah, it was interesting because my career, obviously I had, a decent amount of injuries, and then I was good for a couple years, and then my fifth year came and I was just plagued with some muscle injuries. So that year was kind of a weird year for me. And then going into the draft, I knew, that was something that wasn't, um, super, people weren't super excited about. So I think my expectations were pretty realistic, especially talking to my coach, Steve Swanson. He was kind of like, being drafted is nice, but it's not the only way. So I think I was kind of prepared to not hear my name, and I knew I could probably get my foot in the door anywhere, just with the context Steve had. And I was like, all I need is a tryout. So I wasn't, I didn't have my expectations set really high. So when I did hear my name, I was super excited, but I was also pretty realistic in the fact that I was like, making a team is really hard. Like I know this is nice, but it really means nothing. Like I still have to go to preseason and earn a contract. So I think I was like super pumped for a night. And then I was like, all right, time to like get fit, get ready for preseason.
Quick turnaround. 'Cause yeah, like you were saying. All right, that's great. Now it's to work. So with that being said, what were some of the first impressions you had of both the club and the area? Because obviously being on the West Coast and then coming over here, I'm sure there was a little bit maybe of an adjustment period. Um, what were your first impressions of both the club and the city when you got here?
The city I loved right away. I had been to Seattle once for like a tournament. And I just remember like loving everything about it. It was so beautiful. But I obviously this was preseason, so it was February, I want to say. So it was like super rainy and gray and kind of depressing. um, so I do remember that like was one of the darkest winters I think like on in history. So that was
Oh,
yeah, that was literally when I arrived. So I didn't see the sun for like 3 months. Um, and then the club, I really did not know much about. I just know they had a lot of success in the earlier years. So I knew I was kind of joining like a really established kind of like older group. So yeah, it was intimidating just like walking into a team where there had been like a lot of long-standing players that had been with the club for a while. So yeah, it was an intimidating environment, but yeah, it was fun though. It was a challenge.
what sort of relationships do you have with some of those founding members of the club? You know, whether it be Megan or Jess or Lauren. I believe Steph is in there as well, Steph Cox. I mean, I know you've been with the club now for 5 years. Is there any sort of bond that's there because of the longevity of the club? Because I know in that interview with Sounder at Heart, you talk about how much turnaround there is each and every year, and that's evident with Jasmine Spencer heading to Houston and Ellie Long now with Gotham. Uh, is there any sort of bond, when you're able to have those teammates for as long as you have had?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I feel like the founding members have like a really tight bond because I think they went through a lot more stuff before I was even in the picture. Um, but yeah, I mean, just knowing them for the past 5 years, playing with them, I feel like I've just gotten to know them on and off the field. And it's just been, yeah, it's been really fun to kind of hang out and not only learn from them on the field, but then, hang out off the field and like not talk anything about soccer. So yeah, it's been really cool.
Do you remember what your thoughts were when OL came into the picture for this club? Because obviously it was Seattle Reign, and then it was Reign FC. Now it's OL Reign. Do you remember thinking about that? What it was like to be part of a group like that, where it's OL Reign and um, OL as a whole. What were your thoughts when they came into the picture for this club?
It was really surprising. I do remember like getting that phone call and they were like, oh yeah, OL bought us out. And I was like, oh wow. Um, but I mean, I thought it was going to be like awesome. Obviously, I know the history of OL over in France, so I thought them bringing their expertise to America could be awesome, and bringing maybe some of their style of play, some players obviously that we've had. Um, it was an exciting partnership, and I think it's proven to be that.
So, with that being said, do you have any thoughts on your jersey changes throughout the year? Because it's always cool to sort of look back on those logos. Um, but now I do have to admit, I am a fan of the newer kids. Um, I don't think I haven't been I know I remember I think they were like neon green, I
Oh
think at
yeah,
one point. That was interesting.
yeah.
Um, do you ever reflect on sort of jersey changes? Because I know for some players, across any sport, it's like, oh, that's just a cosmetic. It doesn't really matter. And then there are some people who, it does matter to a little bit more. Do you ever look at that? Because obviously this year it's a different kit as opposed to, previously. But do you ever pay attention to things like jerseys, or is it all just, hey, this is what I wear when I'm playing? I don't really care about it.
um, I mean, I was pretty pumped when they got rid of the neon yellow ones. Those were not my favorite. I think my favorite ones are probably like 2019. We had like a navy blue and kind of like white stripe
Oh,
one. Yeah, those were pretty sick. And then I think this year's home ones are cool because they have all the season ticket holders' names, like really faintly. You can read. But yeah, the logos are hard. I really loved our original logo. It was like really cool. I mean, the new one's cool too, but then someone told me it looks like a lion eating a potato chip, and now I just cannot unsee it.
Oh, I see
Right?
that now. I'm like
Yeah.
looking at my shirt. I'm like, what do you mean? And I'm like, oh, that definitely looks like a potato chip.
Yeah, it looks like a
Huh.
Pringle.
Great. Now I won't be able to look at the logo the same.
All right.
Uh, but yeah, it is interesting looking back at this club and just looking at the different kits, and no shame on anybody who made that highlighter kit, but yeah, that one might be an outlier.
Yeah.
Um, to get back on track, of course. Um, are you able to sort of take time, a little bit of time, and reflect on your time with this club and just the changes you've seen? Because, as I mentioned, like you're saying, there is change every year and there's so much turnover just throughout the league as a whole, not even just on one club. So I know you spoke a little bit about with Sandra at Heart, but I mean, coming in and year out, is there anything that you think about, when you see that sort of turnover? Because I'm sure, for some of these women, it is hard because I'm sure you want some stability, you want to stay with the club, and then for others, it's like, hey, this is a new beginning for me, this is a new chance. So, are you able to speak a little bit on that, and as well as just your time in the Pacific Northwest? Because obviously, it's moved from Seattle to Tacoma, not
Mhm.
the same site. Can you just speak on your time with the club and the changes that you have seen over time?
Yeah, I think there's always a bit of like an adjustment period, especially in preseason. We always bring in like a ton of players to try out or just to train. So there's like, a football size roster on the first day of preseason. So I think at first, it's always like a little hard, a little adjustment, but then as the weeks go on, everyone gets more comfortable. I mean, especially this year, there were so many new faces in preseason. And now, like, 5 months in, I think we have like one of the tightest teams we've ever had. Um, so yeah, like it's just a lot of getting to know people, getting comfortable on and off the field. And then I think even we play all these other teams week in and week out, and I always see familiar faces from old Reign teams. So I do think that's, it's pretty fun seeing people like move on, but still kind of, we'll talk about years back when we all played for in Seattle, and yeah, just to reflect. It's been a journey for sure, but yeah, it's been fun.
I'm glad you mentioned that because I don't entirely remember her tenure here, but JC Johnson with Kansas City now spent time here. So I thought that was pretty cool when she got subbed on. I was making sure she didn't score though. I was like, I don't need to have us have a goal allowed, but it was definitely cool to see that because like you're saying, I'm sure it's like every kind of week, like the other week with Gotham, seeing Allie
Yeah,
Long back and
in Houston,
um
there was
Houston,
Jasmine,
and I was
Megan
like,
Shea, so many of them.
I saw Spencer with the ball. I was like, please don't score. Please
I
don't
know.
score. But yeah, I mean, to your point, I'm sure it is nice seeing these players back, and hopefully I'm sure it's tough to lose those guys, but at the end of the day, I'm sure it's good to see them, with different clubs and hopefully succeeding there. Just maybe not against us. Um, shoot. Oh, I was gonna say something I forgot. Um, what were your thoughts on Coach Bencetti's time with the Reign? Because obviously resigned. Sam has taken over interim head coaching position. Do you have any just thoughts and reflection on his time with the Reign? Because obviously 2020 was hectic, I'm sure, for everybody.
Mhm.
And then even this year with trying to get everybody put in the right spot. And like you were saying, not necessarily having some lineup continuity. Can you just reflect on his time as coach?
Yeah. Obviously felt bad for him coming in to the NWSL, and then of course the pandemic hits and things were a mess. So yeah, he was really just kind of thrown like headfirst into the Challenge Cup, which this league is like no other in the world. Like any team can be any team on any given day, and that's obviously not the case in France and other places he's coached. So I think it was definitely an adjustment period. And I think we started to find our legs a little bit, but yeah, we just never kind of gained that continuity that we were looking for, like in lineups or in our play or anything. Um, but he was a really awesome guy. Like I actually really enjoyed our conversations off the field. And I think he had good intentions with, um, with his coaching and what he wanted to do. I just don't think the team was really able to kind of gather what he was saying and really like execute it to the best of our abilities.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that was, you can attribute that to a language barrier or what it was, but I don't think we were really ever able to be on the same page with Fareed. So yeah, ultimately I think it was probably time to move in a new direction. But yeah, I really appreciated him during his time here.
What have you seen differently uh, with Sam Lady at the helm, at interim head coach currently? And has there been any sort of focus change with whether it's, how to attack or play style? What have you seen in the tenure there as head coach, as interim head coach?
Yeah, I think Sam just being with this team and in this league for, since the beginning has been super beneficial to us because he knows kind of what it takes week in and week out to prepare and how to get the team ready for games. One main thing I've noticed, he's just super detail oriented. Um, Wherein with Fareed, I think it was more of like an overall general theme per game. And now we kind of really break it down like to a granular level of like, we want to get this, and this done. And these are our focuses and this is how we're going to do it. Um, so I think with Sam, that has been really helpful in preparation. Like I think the team just kind of feels um, like ready to play every week now because like we have a plan and we know how we're going to execute it.
And hopefully, that going forward is something that, you can build on, like we said earlier. But I'm sure it's interesting, at least through your eyes, this week it wasn't on the injury report. It wasn't as many people, questionable or injured. I know that Allie and Rosie White were out. And because I don't want to just say that nobody was on the injury report, but at least if you look at international duty, Quinn and Nicole, and all the best of luck to everybody in international duty, and Angelina and Megan and Rose. I'm pretty sure that's everybody. Having all those players out, is it weird at all, or is it more like, okay, can't really focus on that? Whatever lineup we've got to just go forward with and play Kansas City, um, as well as last week. Is there any sort of mindset, when you're around this time, when players are out with their international teams, or is it just still, hey, they're out, just next person up?
Yeah, I think it's kind of just been like business as usual because we have such a deep team. Like looking at our roster and going to practice, like we are so talented from like number one to number whatever we are, 27, 30. I don't even know. We have a lot of players, but yeah, I think like anyone can start on any given day. And so, people being on international duty, I don't really think we skip a beat in terms of throwing people in the lineup and them kind of maintaining the level that, we know that we want to keep.
Is it still weird for you to be called a veteran? Is that something that you've adjusted to yet, or is it still like, this is odd for me? Because again, to go back to that interview, I know it was like when you first got called the V word, it was something that was odd. Is that changed at all? Are you more accustomed to it, or is it still like, this is odd for me?
I feel like I've gotten more accustomed to it as the season's gone on. We just have like so many young players. Like I feel like there's like 10, like 22, 23-year olds. So I definitely feel like older than them. So yeah, I think I've gotten used to the word veteran. I was a little shell shocked at first, but
um and then you did speak on, have being able to be that comforting presence when a new player comes in. And you mentioned how that was at Virginia, how it was just a comforting locker room, as well as to tie the two. You talked about how close of a group that was, as well as this group currently, with OL being a close group. Um, I mean, what sort of things are you able to do with these newer players? For example, when you bring players like, here we go. Yeah. With, Rose Lavelle in, you have to bring in the players from France and Marizon, Booty, and Les Sommer. What are you able to do? Or is it more with some of the other players that I just mentioned? Are they professionals and it's not necessarily trying to get them comfortable? It's just trying to welcome them into this newer group.
Yeah, I think all of the players you just named are super like established, successful professionals. So I think they'd probably be fine regardless. But I think walking into a locker room that's not a super like welcoming environment just isn't great for anybody. And I think wanting to get the best from people, I think having like a tight group and a welcoming locker room and environment can only help with that. So yeah, I mean, I think everyone has really like embraced them coming. I don't think, like I said before, like I really don't think we've skipped a beat with all the changes. And I think it's probably helped them on the field and ultimately the entire team.
It's always really cool whether whoever it is putting it on social media is seeing, what you guys are up to. Whether I think it was, what was it? Oh, I think it was training with the OL Academy the other day with you guys. I could be completely wrong. Or Eugenie traveling around Seattle, whether it was the Mariners game a couple weeks ago or a Sounders game. It's always really cool seeing what you guys are up to, and it's usually always with the team. So seeing that tight knit bond is always really cool. Um, and I'm sure it helps on the field. That chemistry is something that doesn't just, you can't just insert somebody and expect them to be comfortable with their teammates, having that trust. So I'm sure that is going to be something that's beneficial. I do want to take a step away and move to Melbourne. What was your time like there? Because that's a whole different place, whole different continent. How do you reflect on that time with the victory?
Yeah, I'm super thankful for the time that I spent there. I went in kind of with the expectation of like it'd be great to play in the off season, and it would be better to play in Australia in the off season, like in a beautiful place on the beach. So yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed my time. I kind of think I got everything I wanted to get out of it, soccer and like travel wise. Um, Again, I went in with realistic expectations and that like I didn't think I was gonna go and really like elevate my game to the next level, just given the team and the league and everything. But I do think it was nice to get touches day in and day out, and just kind of stay fit. Um, it is challenging though, especially someone who with a history of injuries. It was hard for me to go a full year with really no break because I think I went home from Australia that year and had like a week and a half before I had to leave. And then kind of that next season with Seattle, I had a lot of injury issues that year. So, I don't know if I fully like attribute it to that, but it was overall like a great experience.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense. I know that there are some players who both in, for example, the NWSL and the WNBA who will, on the off season, they'll go um, play overseas. But I mean, to your point, that might not be something that is necessarily beneficial all the way around, both injuries and just not necessarily getting a good solid break. Um, but I mean, I'm sure it's also cool, like you said, to go over and play in Australia. I'm sure that's a whole different experience. Um, so it was interesting to see that, and looking at your career and then saying, oh, there's Melbourne, and just sort of being able to reflect on that. But to come back, have you had any sort of fun or cool experiences with any of the newer players this season? I know having, these players who have done great things in France come over. I'm sure that's something that's like they can only help this club, as well as players like Rose Lavelle and Jimena Lopez, I believe, still has to join the club. I know she's, I think, with international duty. Um, but just in general, what have you had any cooler experiences with some of these newer players, or is it just everybody still trying to do their own thing and get acquainted on their own terms?
Yeah, I'm still kind of getting to know a lot of them, and I don't think we've had like a ton of time to really like do super fun things off the field. We've just been like really busy with travel and stuff. But yeah, I feel like every day, like, I chat with them and get to know them better, like on and off the field. Um, like Maro and Buhati have like their two little dogs. I was like, your guys' dogs need to be my dogs. so that is gonna be in the book soon. Um, Rose, I feel like was here for like a hot second. So yeah, still kind of trying to get to know all of them a little bit more.
It's funny you mention the dog aspect because I'm pretty sure you have a dog named Renly, if I'm correct. Um, and then obviously you mentioned those two, but also Rose. I believe Rose is a big dog person, so there's a big dog connection right there.
Yeah. So
Um,
she met Ren. And Ren was like all over her, and I was like apologizing that he was so misbehaved. And she was like, no, it's totally fine. And I was like, okay, cool. We're gonna be friends.
so it is cool to see that because obviously, when there are people in the stands, we see that sort of chemistry, but it's always cool again to touch back and see what the club is doing on and off the field. Um, to say on the field though, who would you say is your most vocal teammate, and is it or is it not just Fishlock?
It's 1000% Jess Fishlock. She is definitely the most vocal presence we have on the field by far. But like super helpful. Definitely always hear her voice if it's, if we're playing well or bad. You hear it all the same. She's always there.
It's cool to look at that and then think back to the press conference where you talked about how she was thanking you and not putting you in the she was thanking you for giving her pointers, not her giving pointers. That was I was like, huh, you know. And then this is always a question I ask with Rain players. Do you have a pick for funniest teammate? I know that's difficult for people to come with. Similar to the DJ question. I've asked a DJ question a couple times and I get different picks. Do you have a pick for who you would say is the funniest teammate, or is that a little bit of a difficult question to ask?
I would say it's probably Ella this year. Um, she's just like so weird. It's like the funniest, like randomest stuff comes out of her mouth, and we're all like, "What, Ella?" But it's like hilarious. She's something else.
Now I want to take it off the field because I'm sure, like we mentioned earlier, you had training today, and at the end of the day, professional soccer is what you do. So I'm sure it's like, hey, soccer, that's great and all, but sometimes I want to break. Um, Looking at off the field stuff, do you have any thoughts on the ways that the NWSL and the WNBA have led the way for different issues, such as social justice? Because, I mean, when we look at it in terms of COVID, NWSL was like, I'm pretty sure the first league to go and play, you know, under the circumstances of what was going on and didn't have to stop play after that took place. WNBA did a great job. Both leagues did a great job of addressing what was happening over the summer of that time, both with what was happening with George Floyd and with the movement. Um, do you have any thoughts on the way that those leagues really lead things? Because at least how I've seen it, especially over the last year, both of those leagues have taken charge and they take the first step in things. Do you have any thoughts on the way that those leagues have done that, or just how they kind of lead the way?
Yeah, I think the WNBA is really like at the forefront of everything. I think they really set the tone, um and it's really cool to see like the players kind of taking matters into their own hands and really um elevating their voices and getting into all these causes. And I think the NWSL, I think we've tried and I think we've done a decent job. I know sometimes the players kind of face roadblocks within the league, but I think kind of coming up with compromises and seeing what we've been able to accomplish has been pretty cool. And I think, yeah, it's fun to see us really passionate about these things and try and and do as much as we can. But I think we're always, striving to do more. So hopefully in the future we can kind of keep going.
Yeah, I think that's a good point to make, is that I don't think there ever really is a time when you work with issues like that where you can just say, okay, it's done, put it to bed.
Mhm.
Um, we had a good talk last night when we did the weekly show for the podcast here. The MLB announced that they're going to donate $150 million to the Players Alliance, um, in hopes of working on having better representation of the Black community in baseball. Just because, so for years that's gone down if we look at numbers, there have been less and less Black players represented. And my friend Omari made a great point that a lot of these, for baseball is a very expensive sport to play, because with soccer, he made a great point. Soccer, for the most part, you just kind of need the ball and some sort of object to kick it at in terms of a goal. Baseball, you've got to have a bat, you got to have a glove, you got to probably have a couple balls. Um, so I think you make a great point when you say there's no real time where you can just stop with these issues. You got to keep finding ways to both listen and learn and just see how you can contribute. So like you were saying, WNBA has done a great job of just being up in front of things. It's been amazing to see them take charge. But again, like you said, I'm sure there's never really a stopping point, which sucks because obviously you'd like to say there's nothing that we have to work on anymore, but that's not the case. And it's exciting to see with this club, at least, with having the sponsor that is there on the front of the jersey, stuff like that, as well as honoring, different spots in Tacoma. Um, I am proud to, come to these games and support the Reign because I know what the Reign does on that side of it. Sticking with the Pacific Northwest, can you sort of look back at your time up here, because you come from the East Coast? Again, we come from the East Coast, and now you've spent the better of 5 years here.
Mhm.
How has that changed over time? Because obviously, I mean, in that span, Seattle itself has grown. It was the fastest growing city last year, even despite the pandemic, and even Tacoma continues to grow as a result of that. Can you sort of just look back on your time in the Pacific Northwest as a whole?
Yeah, I like love it here. I could definitely see myself like living here long term. Like I just, especially being here for 5 years, like I just feel such a connection um to the cities and the fans and everything. I love I love the outdoors, so it's like a perfect place for me because I'm always doing something or like in the wilderness somewhere on the water. Yeah, so it's definitely like such a beautiful place to do all of that. And then I think just kind of like the connections I made with the people I've met have been, it's been really cool. I lived with a family my first 2 years and I'm still super tight with them, and I train one of their boys still, and I hang out with them a lot. So um yeah, Seattle and Tacoma too, they both hold like a special place in my heart.
It'll be really cool to see the doubleheader in August and just hopefully see a really great turnout for that. And that'll be really exciting because I know that OL and both Tacoma and I think the Sounders are involved as well in um, the new facility where the site's going to be. I think there's talks about that. And I think those just came back up a month ago or so. But it'll be really exciting to see the double header and hopefully get a lot of great representation out there, as well as whenever that site is decided and getting you guys a facility, because I'm sure that Cheney Stadium's been a solid home for a little bit, but even looking at Kansas City's the game last week, no, not even last week, 2 days ago, goodness, um, some of those corner kicks don't look fun. They don't look fun
Yeah,
because you're right
no.
against the outfield wall.
Yeah, you have like one step to hit it in.
And then that really isn't enough.
Yeah, no.
Um,
I think we're ready for a full size pitch for sure.
yeah, and it'll be really exciting to see when that takes place and where it takes place, because I know that OL, in talking about it, has just said Seattle as a whole, and that ranges from Seattle to Tacoma, and there's a lot of space there. So it'll be exciting to see when that takes place. But lastly, can you talk a little bit about Water for Her and how you got involved with that?
Yeah, got involved through one of my old teammates, actually, Betsy Brandon. kind of put me in touch. She had gotten involved through a friend. But the ultimate founder was Chris Long, who played football at UVA and, was super successful in the NFL. And yeah, I'm always looking for ways to get involved in new kind of projects to take on. And just hearing about it, I thought it was a really cool, like amazing cause. I've had a lot of fun with it so far. So
It's always really cool to see what different both causes and projects the players are working on. And when I saw that, I thought that was really cool. And I wanted to highlight that. So I want to thank you for, again, taking time out of your day. I'm sure you're probably a little tired after, playing a game the other day and then having practice. So is there anything that ultimately you want to leave? I know that we mentioned water for her. Is there anything else, any other projects that Kristen McNabb is working on, or is there anything that you want to leave with?
no, nothing else that I've really been working on. I think Danny Weatherholt has done a really good job within the club. She's kind of been organizing ways we can get more involved in the community. And we had just put on a camp, I think, with the Boys and Girls Club of Tacoma yesterday.
That's
Is that
what
what
it
you're talking about?
was.
Yeah.
No. I was like, that's what it was. Yeah.
But yeah, that was super awesome to get to know some of the kids in our community. And some of them didn't even know who we are, and then at the end of it they were like, we're gonna come to every game. So yeah, that was just super cool.
That's always the hope, at least for me with these interviews, is trying to um try to get the stories out there, because I'm not the one telling the story. It's you that I have to, I'm trying to be like a messenger here in a way, um and just, it's always interesting to me because whenever I get a chance to wear my rain stuff outside, and when I go to work, I try to, just because I'm hoping that people go, oh, what is that? Because I
Yeah.
know that we get some pretty solid crowds in Tacoma, and I know Tacoma loves you guys. But I think just trying to raise that awareness is good all the time, because I have a friend who said she loves soccer, and I go, oh, you should watch the rain, and they go, oh, what are they? I go, oh, they're our NWSL team. And I go, oh, you don't know what the NWSL is? So just trying to do our best, because I know still it's like ESPN doesn't even really talk about you guys, which is, again, with some of the performances, not even just with the rain, outside of the rain and just in the league, I believe they're remiss for doing that, for just not speaking about it.
Yeah,
So just
thank
trying
you.
to
Yeah.
tell these stories and get it out there, and someone says, oh, I want to learn more about insert, one of you guys that I've talked to, I'm hoping that's what it is. I'm hoping that I am able to do a decent job of telling that story. I feel like I talk too much today. I don't want to talk. I want you to do more of the talking. I don't want to be saying too much, but regardless, I appreciate having you on, and um excited to see what comes, because like you were saying, it's interesting to hear that standpoint about having a more specific game plan going into weeks, and then coming off this win, going into Chicago on the 18th, I believe it is, and hopefully just to keep things rolling. So again, I appreciate it, and I'm excited to continue to see the season, because I know we've got multiple months to go. So thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having me.